Well. Welcome to the April 2019 mining update. Now, I gotta warn you ahead of time, a lot of this ended up getting scrapped because the microphone was not working with OBS, as you ended up seeing in a previous video where I thought it was disconnected, but it actually was connected, it's just not working right. So I haven't figured out what the issue was, but then I ran into some other issues where I couldn't even successfully remote into the miners without it crashing, and when I tried to go directly into the miners themselves to use OBS, it would crash as soon as I started recording. So we were recording the screen with the camera, but at least we have acceptable audio for those clips. However, bringing audio back on the table, it ended up being really windy when I was recording this, so I'm going to apologize now for the wind noise. The weather here has just been absolutely ridiculous the last few days. It was snowing, and then we had a nice day when I painted, and then it rained for 2 days. So Canada can't really decide what season it's in right now, and I was just trying to work with that to try and get the painting done. But before I get more into that, let's just dive into the clips and you can see firsthand.
Here we have what you could say is a computer graveyard. Or at least, these are just some of them. This probably isn't even 1/5 of the amount of old computers that I have. Now, the ones in question for today are going to be these, which I already have set up. They were just old parts that I was using for testing. I pretty much rigged these up with a handful of old graphics cards that I just had laying around that I wasn't going to be using for anything. They're both remote access computers running headless that I can sign into, so I can control everything on them, which we'll end up diving into a little bit later. But basically, what it comes down to is one of these has an AMD CPU, one of them has an Intel CPU. That way we can test which variant of similar levels of crap CPUs will cost you the most in hydro while you're making no money mining Bitcoin in 2019. Now, I'm not really sure how I ended up at this point, but the AMD computer has all of the NVIDIA cards and the Intel computer has all of the AMD cards. But none of that really matters. We're mostly just checking to see what you can even mine with old hardware. And that is my old Antminer S7, which we'll probably get into at a later date, but definitely not today. This computer here is the AMD with the NVIDIA cards, and for some reason it kept turning off every time I tried to do Windows updates, so I have it set up here at my desk doing the Windows updates, and now everything's working fine. I'm not really sure what that was about, because it's done Windows updates before over remote. And I never ran into any issues, but for whatever reason, it just decided to crap out on me. So I have a monitor, keyboard, mouse I'm going to set up in the other room that I can use as a plan B to connect directly to these without actually moving them. Now you can see they are absolutely filthy. Tons of dust in these, so they need to be cleaned anyway. The Alienware all-in-one cooler, drive bay in there, converts the 5 1/4 to 3 1/2 for hard drives, and has a fan in the front, so I'm actually using those as a direct feed straight across the GPUs. And we have 3 GPUs in there and a 1000 watt power supply. And then tucked way down there, which you can't really see, is a 240, 256, I'm not sure what it is. It's 200 and something gigabyte SSD, that's the boot drive. And then in here, it's kind of hard to see, but there's 8 gigabytes of DDR2 RAM. Now, over to this guy. Same 1000 watt power supply. We have the 2 AMD cards. We have 20 gigabytes of RAM. Now this all-in-one cooler is still an Asetek cooler. It's actually the exact same model as the Alienware one. This is just the non-branded Alienware version. You can even see that the cable is the same. There's a little spiral power cable. And over here we have to turn the ISO up. There we are. And in there you can see that the cable is the same and everything. While we're waiting for the updates on the AMD and NVIDIA computer, I'm going to take this apart and we're going to clean out the case, and I have some things in store for this that we're going to get into in a minute. But first, I got to strip this down to a bare case. Oh, why is this in 60 frames per second? Ugh, that's better. So, this is my super sketchy setup.
stands, so we're painting it on here. So first we're using self-etching primer, and I already scuffed the entire thing and washed it, so it's completely clean and ready for primer. Now let's paint. Back. Okay. Now the top doesn't really have to be done, because there's a panel that goes over top of that. However, the edges are visible, so we do have to paint this part here. So now we wait for that to dry. And I didn't forget about the bottom. Got that too. Now it's time for the satin black. Might as well do this side first, and I'll flip it over when it's dry, and we'll do the other side. Black is all done. It was too hard to get into all the little tight areas while filming, so you get to see it now. It's still wet. You can see up in the top there where it's still shiny. But once it's dry, it'll be satin. It's actually look more like the front here. So that's pretty much done. Now we can move on to the exterior pieces. This panel here I've already scuffed up, but because it's already painted, which that one over there, that does have the anti-corrosion coating on it, but because of the age and everything, and I can't really see the difference between bare metal and the anti-corrosion coating, I primed the entire chassis. However, for this piece here, it's already painted, so I can see where the bare metal is, and right here. So those are the only spots that I'm actually going to be priming. Just quick. Make sure this whole back piece here. There we go. Okay, so that's it. That's primer's done on that. Now the thing with primer is it's essentially just grippy paint. So because I've already scuffed this up, you can kind of see the scuff marks there, but not really, but they're there. So that is just scuffing up the already adhered paint, which means that paint will stick to it. So now we can use this engine enamel. I got it this like retro blue color. Doesn't say anywhere on it, but you'll see the color soon enough. So it's, wow, it looks really bright. It's not quite the right color on camera. It's kind of like a faded baby blue. Looks like old industrial equipment, which I guess makes sense. It's for engines, old engines. Wow, the wind is bad today. That is absurdly blue on the camera. It definitely doesn't look like that. Now we're on to the gray. Just for the accents. And you can see the two blue panels are done. So now I'm doing the inside first. You can see where the bevel goes in. And same with the fan one. So these are both already scuffed. Yeah, that's pretty much that. Now I can wait for those to dry. Do another coat from the other way, so that way the paint gets in between all of the honeycomb, and then we can flip them over. Do the other side. Those blue panels there just look absolutely ridiculous on this camera. They're definitely not that color. In hindsight, I should have done this first because it's going to be multicolors. So I used adhesion promoter and then the primer, because in here is going to remain gray, which means I need to paint it gray, mask it off after it's fully dried, and then I can make it blue to match the rest. So we gotta do the gray. And pretty well only in these areas. Okay. Now we can wait for that to dry. Do another coat. And mask it up. I've changed my mind on how I'm going to mask this, so I'm just going to paint all of it blue. And then this side here. Next coat, I'm going to flip them around. Let's start off this. Okay. So everything over there is done. Now we're just going to finish these with the gray. This is how I got the gray. A lot of masking. So I gotta peel all this off. Paint is definitely still wet, so I do not want to let this touch the blue. Okay, there we go. I'm content with that. So that'll match the top piece. And then for the bottom here, I'm going to do the orange as the accent. Well, I got the motherboard back in, so now we can do the GPUs. It's the 370 up top and the 380 on the bottom. Power supply is in, and I also put those two little grommets in there. So now
what is left? We gotta run the cables. We gotta put the adapter in to go from the 5 1/4 to 3 1/2. Put the SSD back in. So let's do the SSD right now. It's a 5 1/4 to 3 1/2 with the HyperX adapter bracket to the 2 1/2 SSD, which is a Crucial M500 240 gigabyte drive. So that can go in. Or actually, we should probably put the fan on first. And then it can go in. Nope. No, we gotta do the fan and then those brackets. Then it can go in. Okay, there we go. This is ready to go in. Finally. Now to paint inside the logo, I'm using some of the orange spray paint in the lid with a very fine brush, and I'm just doing it by hand. So I'm gonna have to do another coat on that, but I'm basically just filling the letters, sort of. I'm just kind of dabbing it in there, and then because the paint is so watery, it just kind of fills it out. You can see that that A is gonna need a lot more, but this is just tedious. There we go, that's the third coat. Well done. Matches the 5 1/4 to 3 1/2 adapter with the fan in it. The SSD is installed in there, and then we have the top panel done to match, so everything is good to go. Now I just gotta wait for that to dry, then we can actually install it. And we got the front panel on now. So you can see the orange. And then up here is the gray. So we can put this in now. Well, no, that just cleans it right up. And for the upper piece, I have this one here. And this one here. That's it. I don't have the other 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this one down here and put this one up here. And I'm going to use these as brackets to hold something that covers this. I'm not entirely sure yet. We're not quite there. So for now, there's just going to be a hole, but otherwise, I think it's coming out pretty good. So that's pretty much it. Got the gray fan grill, got the fan back in, got the gray in here, orange, black power button, gray, black. You get the idea, everything matches. And then in here, the orange, then the SSD, and then the 380, 370, 1000 watt power supply. I can't remember what motherboard or processor and all this stuff. Asus P7P55DE. And it was an i5, I don't remember which one, I think it was 760. Then the 20 gigs of RAM, just assorted crap that I had laying around, and then the non-branded Alienware liquid cooler with another Antec fan. So we have that fan, and the one in there, the Antec one up there. So we got 3 fans. And now I just get to hook up all the wires and we get to see if this thing still works. I'm not entirely sure why, but this computer keeps crashing every time I open OBS. So we're gonna have to deal with it this way. Every time I would remote into this computer, it would work for a bit and then it would just turn off. Well, the computer would stay running, but it would just completely lock up, like the mouse cursor wouldn't even move. And then I tried installing OBS on this and hooking it up directly. And as soon as I start screen recording, it crashes immediately. So what we're doing here is we have NiceHash Miner Legacy open. So this one here is the one that supports CPU mining now. However, for whatever reason, it doesn't on this computer. So if we go down here, we go to computer properties. So you can see here, this is an AMD Phenom 2 X6 1090T. And this is not supported for CPU mining. But just with this, why did that reset there? Okay, just with
the way this is running, just with the 970, the 750, and the 760 Ti, we can still start. It's going to skip the algorithms that it can't do. I've already run the benchmark, and the benchmark will run all of the algorithms that it's capable of doing. Apparently there's no algorithms. Interesting. Okay, something else is going on with this computer. I haven't figured it out yet. The other one is working though, so this is just going to be, we're just going to write this computer off and we'll get back into this one in a few months. Let's start mining when the benchmark is complete. There's 42 benchmarks to do. Okay, we're not recording this whole thing. That's going to take forever. Actually, this computer might crash before the benchmark's done. So this whole computer in its own is probably going to end up just being a complete write-off. Let's see, if we go to benchmark, do quick benchmark, see if maybe it'll go a little bit quicker. But anyway, when I was doing this, it was making around 80 cents to $1 a day. The Intel computer that has the AMD cards in it, and see how that one does. Actually, I'll let this benchmark run, and if it doesn't crash, then we'll get back into this one. If it does, we'll just skip straight over to the AMD one. Well, would you look at that? It didn't crash. I wasn't expecting that to happen, but the profits are definitely a lot lower than I remember. We're making 9 cents a day. The last time I ran these things was, interesting. The last time I ran these things was April 2018, I guess. And I shut them down, so it's been about a year since these things have run. So in a year, it's gone down 90% profit. oh, even more. For now, we're making 8 cents a day. Now, it definitely goes without saying that these are not profitable anymore. And I tried to run some simulations to see how they could be, and they're not at all. There's no way this is profitable at all. Unless... No. There's no possible way this is profitable. Okay, so clearly this is not profitable. There's no point even trying to run this anymore, so we're going to stop this, shut that off, and we are gonna disconnect this computer, and we're gonna hook up the Intel motherboard version with the AMD cards and see how that one performs compared to these old NVIDIA cards. Well, would you look at that? Right on cue, Windows updates. There we go. So this one here, again, has already been updated. Okay. Wow, this is like dying. Well, look at that. After 10 years, support for Windows 7 is nearing the end. I have a year left of mining. Wow, look at that. That's not happening. Maybe we'll update these in the future, but for now, there's definitely no point on that first one. So this one here, we're going to change to US, and everything's updated. I've already updated the drivers, Windows updates. I've updated the program to the latest one, which supports CPU, but again, this one doesn't. So this one here is a first generation i5 760, 20 gigabytes of RAM. That's just a bunch of stuff that I had laying around. So let's try this one. For some reason only GPU 1 is mining. That's making a whopping 4 cents a day. I redid the benchmarks and now both GPUs are running, and we're making 13 cents a day. Wow. Oh, 12. 11. It just keeps getting worse. 12. So at least this one's more profitable than the other one at 8 cents. We're making a whole 4 cents more here with one less GPU and less power consumption. But that's not that's not at all profitable. Just to run these things, it costs like $8 a day for each one. So we're looking at like somewhere in the ballpark of $15 to $16 a day for a profit of 20 cents. So, no, Bitcoin is not profitable in 2019, at least with old hardware you have sitting around doing nothing. So we're gonna just shut this down. So even if Bitcoin did go up into the future, this is still not profitable to be mining, but I do have a way that it could be profitable. So let's get into that. Now, as you can see, mining in 2019 is not profitable at all. I ran a few simulations in my head to see if there were other ways mining could be profitable. Now, given if you do have acceptable hardware, like for instance an Antminer S9, power consumption of one of those will run you somewhere around $8 to $10 a day, just based on Ontario hydro rates, and the profit yield is a lot higher than that, so it is still profitable, but just barely. Now, the first thing that I was thinking is, what if you have solar power, where you're not paying directly to the hydro companies and you're just using solar directly to a battery bank and the miners are running off of that? Essentially, you're not paying for hydro. Keeping in mind that if your solar grid is already paid off. Now, just given the average Ontario hydro rates, it runs to about $4.72 Canadian per kilowatt hour. In the winter, it runs around $4.38 Canadian. So that gives us an average of $4.32.6. So roughly $4.33. Now, if we take that and then multiply it by 2, these would be consuming somewhere in the ballpark of $8.66 each, because the peak hydro times during the day changes significantly, which both of these don't run a full kilowatt. They have 1,000-watt power supplies, but they're running somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 to 800 watts each with the amount of GPUs that are in them. So TLDR, it roughly works out to around $15 to $16 a day to run this. And as you've seen, we were making roughly 8 cents on one of them and 12 on the other. So that's a whopping 20 cents a day for the consumption of $15 to $16 in hydro. Under no way is that profitable for paying for hydro, which is where I was thinking solar if you had a solar grid. And yes, that's true. If you had a solar grid and you're not using it, or there's excess power that you're not using, the miners could use it, and you could essentially be pocketing roughly 20 cents a day, well, with hardware similar to this. Now, keeping in mind, this is not at all, under any circumstances, an ideal setup. This is just old hardware that I had sitting around that was garbage. I've refurbished most of it to get it functioning again, which is probably why the computer with the NVIDIA cards was having issues, because that 970 was a liquid damage card. So I'm assuming that's the reason that computer keeps freezing every time I'm doing anything other than mining. Either that, or it's the mismatched 20 gigabytes of RAM that it has in it. So yeah, you could be making essentially pocket change off of what would be around a $2,000 to $4,000 solar grid. And if you had the extra hydro that you're not using off of it, you could use it for mining. However, in Ontario, they have hydro buyback, where you sell your excess hydro back to the city, and they buy that for $9.36 per kilowatt, which ends up being more profitable than what you would be paying in hydro to actually mine with these. So even if hydro was free and you were making the amount of money that we were seeing off of this, you'd be making more money selling the hydro back to the city. Because at roughly $15 to $16 in hydro, and then subtract the 20 cents that you end up earning, let's just say $15 total expense out of pocket, you'd be making just over $18.50 a day selling it back to the city. Now, some of you might be thinking, what if Bitcoin goes back up? Well, I thought into that as well, and I thought, well, maybe the coins would be worth having. Even though the price is really low right now, maybe just mining them and storing the coins would be worthwhile. However, with the price being so low, and if you truly believe that it is going to go back up again, you would be better off just to buy the coins. So if you're thinking, well, why would I buy the coins? That's money out of pocket. Well, you could sell the hardware on eBay, and you could either come away with a few $100s, or you could put all of that money into Bitcoin and buy a bunch of it and store it and wait until the value of it ends up going up. So I did some quick price checks on eBay. That GTX 970 sells for around $160 average. The 760 Ti is only about $100. The 750 is around $80. The R9 370 is about $100. The R9 380 is around $150. And we don't even have to stop there. We could get into the CPUs as well, where that Phenom 1090T, that sells for around $115. Now, that first generation i5 760, that's not exactly worth your time, as it's only worth about $30. And shipping from Canada, you're usually looking at around $20 just to ship something out, which after your eBay fees of 10% and your PayPal fees of 5%, you're only making a couple dollars. So it's not entirely worth your time. But just for the sake of argument, let's say we were selling everything. Both of those 1000 watt power supplies were surprisingly worth $100 each on eBay. Now, those Asetek all-in-one coolers, they're around $50 depending on the brand, but they're generally all the same. They're just different designs, really. The motherboards, I found all different variants, and given that it doesn't really matter the motherboard specs because you're just dropping in a bunch of GPUs, as long as they have enough PCIe slots with the supplied power for them, then you're pretty much golden at that point, and those were roughly around $50. And then those SSDs, I bought them for $50, and they're still selling for $50 each. So if you were to sell all of those GPUs, that's $590 before the eBay fees and PayPal fees. The CPUs, you're looking at about $145, the power supplies, $200, the miscellaneous stuff like the all-in-one cooler, motherboards, SSDs, stuff like that, about $150. And then we could even get into those cases where if I were to sell them kind of as is, maybe $50, but with them finished, painted, and if I figure something out for the front piece, we could probably sell them for $100 each. Let's say we took Team Green and Team Blue, we put them together, we made a build with that GTX 970 as well as the i5 760, did a clean install, just kind of a budget gaming computer. The value in parts is worth about $490. And then if we did the same thing for Team Red, and if we took the Phenom 1090T as well as that R9 380, we're looking at a somewhat budget gaming computer for around $565 in parts. And for the US viewers, that Intel and Nvidia build, that's around $365 Freedom dollars, as well as that AMD build being somewhere in the ballpark of $425. So those aren't exactly the best. You can obviously build them a little bit cheaper if you start sourcing better parts and scouring auctions rather than buy it now prices. So let's say you're to sell all of those parts, you're looking at over $1,000 in just old hardware, instead of mining with it for 20 cents a day, costing you over $15 a day in hydro. You could list it all on eBay and make over $1,000. Even subtracting all of the eBay fees and the PayPal fees, you're still looking at about $1,000 profit. So in conclusion, no, mining is not profitable in 2019, especially with hardware like this. However, refurbishing old hardware and selling it on eBay seems to be a pretty good cash grab as long as people are actually buying the hardware that you're selling. So take what you will from this. I'm definitely going to be diving back into this in October. I have tons of other GPUs that I didn't even get to play with because I don't have enough motherboards to actually run them all. There's all the higher end ones like the 1050, 1050 Ti, the 1060, the 1070 that I have. All of those we didn't even get into. And those, under these circumstances, might be profitable. I'm still assuming they aren't, just because of how low Bitcoin is right now. But who's to say right now? That's for October to decide, which we're also going to get back into that Antminer S7 that I have, which has a failing card, I believe. So I'm going to attempt to reflow that, and we'll toss some of that footage into the October update as well. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button if you liked it, hit the dislike button if you didn't like it. I like to know these things. It helps me make better content for you to enjoy. And lastly, but certainly not least, leave a comment down below. I love reading those and getting back to you guys. But that's it for me, so I'll see you on Tuesday.